Hello, everyone, and welcome to Introducing International Aspects and Collaboration in Malaysian Universities, a roundtable discussion held in partnership between Times Higher Education and Coursera for Campus. My name is Ashton Wemborn, and I'm the Special Projects Deputy Editor at THE. We're joined today by a number of experts and decision makers from the Malaysian higher education sector, so I would just like to thank everyone for joining us today. We live in a world that is more connected than ever, with technology allowing individuals from almost anywhere on the globe to communicate and collaborate. This internationalism is a fundamental aspect of the modern workplace too, making it essential that universities equip their graduates with the skills to collaborate across borders, time zones, and cultures. So before we really get into today's discussion, I'd like to pass on to Claudia Barve at Coursera, who will provide us with some insights into the importance of internationalization and collaboration, and speak a bit about how universities can successfully introduce these aspects to their students.
Thank you, Ashton, and good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure to be speaking with all of you today. Last year when we were speaking with some of you, we thought that 2020 was an aberration and 2021 we'll meet in person and talk about it. But here we are in 2021 as well. We are talking about and we're meeting virtually. And that's how I think both the working world and the education world is moving in 2020 and 2021 with all the uncertainties. And that's why it's important that the universities and the higher education world looks at more international aspects as well as collaboration between the universities and the collaboration between the industry and the academia. What I would want to share with you is our observation working with the industries as well as some of the higher education institutes that we work globally, and what are the changes that we are seeing across us in the higher education space. If you think about a student right now who's graduating or who's even getting into a college, that student is kind of facing unprecedented double disruption. Most of us talk only about COVID, but we forget that another disruption started a few years ago, which was due to all the technical and technology changes. So as a student today, I face the challenge of not only continuously learning skills, which is important in the working world, but also look at some of the other aspects which has come due to COVID. And because the technology changes happens so fast, the academic world, it's very, very difficult for you to keep pace with it because the curriculum can't change every year. While the working world will not wait for the curriculum to change, they will embrace the technology much, much faster. And that's why when we look at some of the other statistics around the world, we get to see that both the industries as well as the industry leaders feel that the students who are coming out of the campuses today do not come with the requisite skills which are needed to perform their day-to-day job. So whether it's technical skills or even the soft skills or the human skills that we talk about, because both technical skills change every 2 to 3 years, whereas the human skills traditionally we have not been teaching in the campuses. And because of these changes, we are seeing a massive shift the way the hiring is happening today. So earlier, just having a degree from the college or a reputed university was sufficient. But today, what the employers are doing is looking at the skills first approach. So the way the hiring is happening, whether it's Google or Apple or Netflix or any of the large companies globally, they are looking at not just degrees, but a proxy signal of other skills that the student has acquired. And that could be in the form of additional courses that they would have taken, badges, certificate. And this is what a massive change we are seeing in the working world, which the universities are gradually adopting to. Last year, all the universities, because of the changes that happened, quickly embraced to whatever technology platform that was available to them. But now they are looking at the longer aspect. So as the senior leaders of the universities, you might be thinking about how do we help the students to acquire skills which are in demand, as well as if there is a balance between offline and online, how do we look at which are the courses that can be delivered online to the students. Whereas on the faculty side, and I must appreciate the faculty members across the world who are not trained or ready for an online world, quickly moved to the online world last year. But as we look at the longer horizon, They're thinking about how do we embrace online, but still keep the engagement with the student as high as possible, but also look at some of the other aspects which are very, very important in the academic world, such as academic integrity and looking at what each student is doing. So today, when we work with hundreds of universities globally, these are some of the aspects that we try to cover from our Coursera for Campus platform. So I would touch upon some of these aspects right now without dwelling into too many details, but also want to give you a flavor of how the universities which have been using Coursera for Campus over a year or even before that have been embracing these changes very, very successfully, and also including some of these factors which are very, very important both for student, the faculty member, and in larger for the university. So the universities which are using Coursera for campus are obviously looking at the content which forms the core of it. So universities may include some of the courses from Coursera platform, which helps them to match with their core curriculum. But more importantly are the other pillars which are on top of it, which is helping students to be ready for the career by helping them to learn the emerging skills as well as multidisciplinary skills. But we should also not forget the foundation of it, which is the faculty members, because unless we handhold the faculty members, all of this will not work. And I just want to quickly share about all of these aspects to give you a glimpse of how does that work. Now, while you may know of Coursera for Campus, we also work with the global companies because they use Coursera platform to upskill and reskill employees. And today we work with almost 20% of the Fortune 500 companies. And these companies use Coursera platform to upskill and reskill employees. And this is the kind of insights that we can also bring to the students and the faculty members and the universities at a very, very granular level. So for example, if the student wants to pursue career in telecom, we can share the industry level insights. If they want to know about a particular company, for example, if a student wants to pursue career in Axiata in Malaysia, we'll be able to share at the company level and also at a role level. So for example, students want to pursue career in data science, then what are the role specific skills that are needed? And to make all of that very, very seamless for the students, we can create a learning platform so that learning program so that students are able to not only learn but develop the skills. Also very, very important, as we touched upon in the earlier slide, is the skill first approach. The universities are today focusing on the skills, but at a much faster rate, the industry is looking at the skills first approach. And to help the students acquire those skills, what we've also introduced are the guided projects. These are the short form of courses which, unlike a course, you're not just seeing the video or have the reading materials, but a student can actually practice using the hands-on labs. So for example, if a student wants to learn about Tableau or a Salesforce, traditionally a student would just see a video or read somewhere, but the student did not have an option of practicing on the real software. Now, through the guided projects on Coursera, the students can actually practice on the real software without having a need to install that particular software. So this is a way wherein the students can quickly learn about skills which are very relevant for the industry. And also, since we partner with the industry partners and large companies, we are also able to bring in a lot of content which is contemporary as well as latest. So we have 50 plus industry partners, the likes of IBM and Google and AWS. So they not only partner with us to create content, but also beyond the courses, there are professional certificates and many, many other such learning options available for the students, which is very relevant for them as they start to look at joining the working world. Beyond that, as we have been talking about the importance of interdisciplinary skills, the importance of human skills, traditionally, if I'm an engineering student, very rarely I'll have an option of learning about collaboration. Very rarely I'll have an option of learning about leadership or management. But today, these are very, very important skills which the companies are looking at in the students when they hire. And today, the universities are also building a curriculum wherein these are some of the skills that can be imparted to the students using the Coursera platform. So how would this work is, again, depending on the flexibility that the university have, whether they would want to offer it for credit or not for credit, the universities are looking at imbibing some of these aspects in their learning curriculum. So whether you want to augment your core curriculum or you want to give job readiness skills to the students, they can build these learning programs as part of the program. So, for example, one of the universities which is working with Coursera is looking at offering the BTech computer science, which has been traditionally offered on campus, but combining with the content from Coursera, they are offering AI specialization. So on the left side, when you see the core subjects, those are being taught on the campus, but some of them have also been taken from Coursera platform. And more importantly, on the right side, the emerging skills. So the content from IBM, Google, and the other global universities, but also some short projects, which gives the opportunity to students to not only learn from the global companies, but also practice the real software that they want to learn. And very, very importantly, the other aspects that we saw, which are important for the faculty members, is to look at how is the engagement and satisfaction, because there are many, many studies done in 2020, which saw that suddenly when we moved to the online world, while the students were happy in some way, but many reports are available which shows that the engagement or the satisfaction level was very, very low. And these are some of the things that you can actually measure and track on the Coursera platform to look at what is the engagement, what is the satisfaction level for each student when she does a course, and very, very important, the skill development. So you can track the skills that your students are developing. And finally, very, very important for the faculty members. So we have to handhold the faculty members because this is a massive change that they are going through. So there are many, many courses available on Coursera platform, which help them to understand how to teach in an online world. And not only that, there are many, many short projects such as creating a student profile on a Google Doc, or making sure that the virtual classrooms, how do they teach on a virtual classroom using Google Slides. These are some of the things which are available on the Coursera for Campus platform, which help the faculty members to transition to a world which will be a combination of online and offline. There are many other things that I'm absolutely excited to talk about, but I'm also conscious of the time, and I'll pause here, but happy to hear your thoughts and views as well.
Thanks, Aklavia, for that introduction. So I would like to begin today's discussion by asking why it's important for students to have access to international universities and industry partners. Before we begin that, when you all speak, if you could introduce yourselves and your institutions, that would be really useful. And also please feel free to jump in at any point in the discussion if you have anything that you want to add. So to return to that question, why it's important for students to have access to international universities and industry partners. If anyone has any insights on that, please do jump in. Hadaria, have you had any thoughts on that? If I could I'll just unmute you as well.
Yeah, unmute myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, or maybe good morning to some of us in here. Why is it important for students to have access to international learning and industry partners? Well, we are always talking about marketability, employability. I think that is the bottom line. If the students are exposed to all this, then it's value added to their education, value added to their experience, and definitely going to, even though it's probably a small part in the CV that he is developing when at the university, having exposure into an international industry in internship probably, or having exposure into international placement at different universities would definitely add value and enrich the student. I think that is the bottom line, employability. Yeah.
Thank you. Faisal, perhaps you've got some similar experiences on that point, or you know, in specific relation to the digital transformation that we've seen in the last year. Do you think that that's making it easier for students to access the collaboration that we're speaking about? Sorry, I think we can't hear you there. It looks like you're not muted.
Sorry, which Faisal are you addressing? Myself or another Faisal there?
Oh, sorry, no, yourself.
Okay, I go by the name of Rafiq. Faisal is a bit feminine, I feel like. You know, Rafiq is a bit more. Anyways, yeah, USM. I'm Rafiq. I'm from USM. We are in the midst of dabbling with that kind of model, in the sense that we're beginning with local universities. I think USM have some strong areas that we're good in, but we also have to admit that we're not that good in some areas. We this year will be collaborating with both private universities and other public universities, and to introduce essentially what Coursera is actually just mentioned just now, and to incorporate local knowledge as well, trying to align with the various national agenda and policies as part of nation building. We are moving towards what was mentioned just now, that model. It's just that the demography of our students, 70% of them comes from the B40. B40 means they come from families with a household income of less than 4,000 ringgit. And fees for these students are highly regulated. But we also have introduced separate student entry where they pay international student fees. And we think that in terms of supporting this idea financially, that can be a platform that we can explore. So yeah, I mean, in USM we are moving towards that. We really like the idea, and we've actually built some momentum because of the COVID situation, and yeah.
Thank you. That's interesting that you found that COVID has helped you build some momentum a little bit. Perhaps it's opened people's minds a bit more to using digital platforms as a way to open out the university experience beyond just the place in which they're studying. Would you agree with that? Have you found that a little bit of an easier task, perhaps?
Yes, definitely. This COVID has actually forced us, actually pulled us in whichever way direction. We have to do it through online. I think there's no choice. Things have to move, semesters have to be not stalled, exams, everything. So yes, COVID is in a way, Ashton, a blessing. We're forced to go through that, and actually it has opened so much avenue for interactions with not only for students but for us lecturers among academia. We interact. I find we interact more with our friends from far away, and distance is not at all an issue. So yes, definitely. And I think UITM is one of the biggest, it is the biggest university in Malaysia. We have 34 locations in Malaysia, and with this digital, I would say, opportunity that was forced on us, we actually find it a lot easier now to manage our campuses and our teaching load across Malaysia, because someone who's sitting here in Shah Alam, where I am, would probably as easily be teaching our students in Kelantan or in Johor down south. So it is making administration and workload distribution much easier for us, and allowing so many new ways of managing the teaching and learning in UITM. Yes.
Thank you. It's interesting to hear about the positive aspects of that, and to manage to find something to, I guess, be grateful for in this situation. I'd like to follow a little bit up on, you mentioned that it's also making it easier for staff to interact with each other. I think in my mind, my focus in terms of internationalism is, as you mentioned, employability. But actually, if staff are able to collaborate with their colleagues, it only creates better courses for your students. Perry, perhaps can you talk to us about any of those aspects?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think I would just reiterate my colleague from particularly from UITM, because we've seen again a huge, I think, realignment of shifting. Someone works very closely with Lancaster University, but a lot of that closeness was based on people flying around the planet, and every so often they might show up here. And a lot of people would use the excuse, oh, I'm not very good with online, etc. And I guess I was lucky because before moving to Malaysia, I worked for a multi-campus university in Australia where we were already doing split campuses, and lecturers would lecture on one campus and would pick it up on others. And we've certainly found across the this last year that suddenly people who could never even find the on switch on their computer have been able to find the on switch, and it's been remarkable the interaction that's happened as well. So I think there's some real positives that has been acknowledged has come from that. And I think that's now translating itself not only internationalization of content. The challenge is having a network of universities you can work with to do that. Now, luckily, I'm quite an international person. So, you know, this semester, I've got 19 global guest professors coming into my master's class. Fortunately, I've got that network, the personal network. The challenge, I think, is for many individuals is not having that network here and building that. And, you know, I think that's now coming through, and I'm giving more and more guest lectures overseas than I ever did before, and saving the planet a lot of CO2 in the process, which is probably a really good thing. So I think that's all been the positive side of it. I think the downside a little bit, of course, is that, you know, a lot of those interactions, and I found that had been built from what existed before COVID. I think a little bit the challenge is building those links when you don't know people and have that network. Fortunately, we had the links with, in our case, Lancaster University, so it's been able to build on those, and other individuals around the university have got them. I think the next stage will be quite challenging is how to make those links work and where we might go after that with much more cooperation over classes. I mean, let's be honest, most universities are teaching fairly similar content around the world. And so there's going to have to be a question, do you need 26,000 universities all doing the same thing? So I think we've shifted professors from being an analog being, you know, we were in our walled garden of the university and, you know, we had our books and our journals and very much paper. We've all become digital. And so how we now go to that next stage, I think is going to be very interesting.
Thank you. Camilla, you seem to recognise some of the same experiences, Perry, in terms of moving staff into a more digital workplace. But how can universities support students as they move into workplaces that are likely to be increasingly digital? Do you think that by narrowing the gap between academia and industry in a university space, on perhaps a platform like Coursera, do you think we're better preparing students to enter the world of work?
Thanks for the question. Well, there's nothing like face-to-face, right? I think we are all pretty tired of seeing each other through this platform, to be honest. I think most people, if not all, you know, in this session would agree with me. That would be the same for our students as well, because, you know, they've been doing this for a whole year. And many of them actually had to go through the internship program also through online, which is really not a feasible kind of, you know, interaction and immersing in the workplace. So, yeah, I think everybody is waiting for this to end. And, you know, but while waiting for it to end, I don't think we have a choice. They do have to adapt, and as much as possible. At University of Malaya, we would like our students to be more agile. And of course, when we say students to be more agile, we need to have the faculty members also to be more agile. And a lot of times in the past year, we are discovering that more and more parties in the industry are willing to come in to help us out and to, you know, fill in the gaps, which we did appreciate their input before this. And but then now with the urgency of ensuring our students are gainfully employed by the time they graduate. And I think the industry is also recognizing that they have to come in order to, equip our students with what they need. So I think it has to go both ways. Some of the items that had been pointed out by Coursera just now, I didn't realize that there was going to be that pitch, but anyway, some of the items that had been pointed out really is very useful and timely for the industry to come in and to work together with the university to identify courses that the students might be able to take on during the course of the program and to be incorporated in the courses that they are taking to ensure that they will be, upskilled or skilled or reskilled, in what the industry may need.
Thank you. I think while we're on the point of narrowing the gap between academia and industry, Clavia, you mentioned the industry partners that Coursera for Campus works with. How do you think bringing those industry insights into your educational platform helps to create more collaborative students?
Yeah, so I think it's important that we provide the students the skills that they need. And the best indicator is to get those content from the companies which are hiring themselves. So the biggest employers today in the tech world are IBM, Google, and AWS. And those are the first set of companies who not only set the trend for the technical adoption, but also they are at the forefront of what the technology changes are happening. And if these industry partners are able to create content which we can get the students to leverage, that's the best form of getting the academia and the industry to work together. So I think that's a great way. The other is our own insights, because we work with different industries, companies across the world. So those are some of the insights that we are also able to bring in, because as a student, I am lost today, because if you tell me to become a data scientist, it's not just one course that can help me become a data scientist. So helping the students to create a learning pathway which makes it very, very easier for them to choose the learning option, but also take the courses which are very, very relevant for them is the other aspect.
Thank you. I think something worth considering is the potential that Malaysia has to become a hub for Asian students who want to experience a global standard of higher education. I think before that change can happen, we need to properly understand what a global standard of higher education will look like and how Malaysian institutions can ensure that this is the standard that they're offering. Is that a consideration that is happening at your institutions? Andrew, maybe you can speak on that. Sorry, I think we've just got you on mute at the moment. Sorry, Andrew, I actually can't hear you there.
So I've just got an urgent call at the moment. So
no problem. Please join us again when you've got the time. Would anyone else like to jump in on that? What a global standard of higher education looks like and how Malaysian universities can ensure that they're offering that? Ahmed, perhaps, did you want to jump in there?
Perhaps I can say something to that.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
So the assumption is that the global standard does not exist in Malaysia. Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm more talking about if we're trying to create more international universities, Malaysia's very well positioned to become a hub for other Asian countries, for those students to come and study in Malaysia. But how do we ensure that students know that the standard they're going to receive at those institutions will be, I can see Andrew's enjoying himself with the Zoom functions. Sorry, how can they ensure that students know they're going to get the standard that they are after?
Yeah, I think there might be rethinking of what a global standard may be, because I believe that many of us actually receive students from abroad, and it's a different flavor that they will actually get when they participate in the universities in Malaysia. And we do not lack any kind of standards that are being offered in the Malaysian universities. Of course, there may be differences, and there may be a range of the expectations and what we might be able to offer. But at the same time, it's a different flavor that we might be looking at. If we are talking about different kinds of global standards.
Thank you. It's I'm sure difficult to even think about bringing new international students into your institutions at the moment with ongoing travel restrictions, and it's unclear which countries will be able to access one another as we move forward. Perry, you also spoke about, while we're saving a whole amount of CO2 by not flying our academics and students across the world, how do we become more internationally minded at a time when we can't travel internationally?
Well, look, I think this is a big challenge that we've all woken up to. And I think, as my colleagues indicated, that there's quite a bit of opportunity that we were on this path way before towards a more digital engagement, and COVID just turbocharged the entire situation. So I think that's been really good that it's done that and made us try things that a lot of academics who are a little bit traditional might have taken a bit of time to get their head around, finding that on button. So I think that's been good because it's made everyone, as I said, come onto that. But I do agree that, there will be some students who are quite happy to study online. And we had many E and open universities beforehand, but they were very specialized in what they did. It was not the preferred outcome. My suspicion is we'll end up somewhere a little bit in the middle as we realize that we can do more things online than we could do in the past. And my own family's been affected. My own daughter's studying in Australia. She was supposed to go on exchange to Canada. Couldn't do it. Plan B was going to the University of Indonesia on a New Colombo planned virtual exchange to learn Bahasa. So she, came up with doing something different. And so people will realign, I think, that way. They will explore new things. I'm working with Venus University in Indonesia, Doi Tan in Vietnam, Dongga in Korea to do a passage to ASEAN Plus, as we're calling it. And bringing hospitality and tourism students together in a couple of weeks. So again, we're experimenting. Before we actually had to move all the students to a different country, and now we're being able to do that online. So, we're looking at virtual internships as well, and how we can get companies, and a lot more companies are, dare I say, now accepting their own employees don't need to come into the office. And I think a lot of companies won't expect that, anything like it. We've got it in the future. So, it's recognizing that world space of education and employment has also changed. And so I think, we're having to grapple with this, and we've grappled with this for a year. And obviously, I think, as I said earlier, this is just the first stage of getting used to that. Of course, I think those face-to-face interactions are very important, but whether it'll be 100% of what we're doing, just like going to work was 100%. Malaysia was very driven about people going to work, and Malaysian universities still seems to only think that you can only work if you're actually in your office. And it's come as a big surprise to a lot of universities that people actually work harder when they're not in their bloody office. And, it's a real wake-up call, and they're not wasting all the bloody planet queuing up and mucking up the traffic around KL. So fantastic. Also, the MQA might also like to realize you don't need to have so many contact hours. I just find that another mind-bending sort of feature of Malaysian education. So that needs to be attacked and dealt with as well. So again, this needs a more radical agenda than I think a lot of people can get their heads around at the moment, because the change is coming. We have to respond to it. I'm not sure bodies like the MQA are quite getting their head around it. They still think having people sitting in line for hours on end with talking heads is the way to go. It's not. This has to be changed to get to those global standards. Malaysia needs to sort of make a bit of a wake-up call, and the MQA needs to get its head around it. But I'll leave that to another day. On the international front, I think a lot of Malaysian universities are well connected, are getting better connected, and this will open up new opportunities. Our international enrollments have actually gone up by 12% this year. So it's not a barrier that we often thought it was.
Thank you. Thanks, Perry. A lot to think about there. I think it's important to assess how all of these changes are going in the moment, so that moving forward we can just only improve our offering. So can any of you reflect on what technologies have worked well for you in the last year and what needs to improve, and perhaps what has the potential to be a really important new digital tool for your teaching? Rafiq, perhaps you could come to us on that.
Well, I think whatever there is on offer at this point of time is good. We dabble with AR and VR, for hands-on courses and virtual labs. I don't think at this particular juncture they offer enough depth for us to replace the traditional hands-on ones. And I think going back to what Coursera has been suggesting, I think that's the value that most universities, especially the research universities in Malaysia, could offer, in the sense that we spend quite a lot on labs. I know some research labs can also be used as teaching labs. There is one thing that I think we fail to address at this point of time. The fact that some courses need hands-on and the virtual ones, it's not really up to the standard that we require, or even the accreditation bodies as well. Other than that, I think technology has been fantastic. Of course, we have issues with access, and universities like us, as I mentioned, have to spend lots in enabling students to have access to connectivity and to laptops and tablets as well. So it's part of our student well-being, but it costs money. So yeah, I think that's one thing that we yet to actually address.
Thank you. Claudia, how has Coursera for Campus been refined since its launch? Has any of the data that you've gathered helped you to pursue constant improvement of the platform?
Yeah, so I think two factors, and this is being discussed earlier in this discussion right now. So one is the access that we just heard, and that's true, right? And especially for the Asian countries, access may not be as smooth as we would want, and that's where I think some of these components of online platform can help. We looked at our data for last year, 2020, when most of the students, rather all the students, were working or learning from home. We saw that almost 70% of the students accessed our content using their mobile platform. And since it is asynchronous and somebody can just learn wherever she has the access to the content, it makes it easier. So you don't have to learn a monolithic course. It is in small chunks. So the students use the mobile platform really well. And the other aspect, which is very, very fascinating point that some of the guests made, was around collaboration. So if there are universities which have multiple campuses, and if there are professors, either star professors or professors teaching a particular subject, may not have to travel to other campuses. So what these professors can do is to create their own private content on Coursera. So if you have 10 campuses, a professor sitting in one campus can create a course on Coursera, which can be leveraged and accessed by the students in the other campuses as well. So these are some of the aspects of the platform, which I think in the last 1 year or so, the campuses and the educational institutes have been using really well.
Thank you. I think the point about access is something that continues to be really relevant. You spoke about students accessing Coursera on the mobile platform. I think we all understand at this point that not all students and also not all faculty have the same access to technology, software space, all of those things that make learning from a distance difficult. How will we continue to support those sorts of students? Hadaria, I saw you nodding there. Is that something that you've been considering?
Well, many lecturers have been using different platforms, not necessarily Coursera. There are so many technologies available, and I think the bottom line is the ease of which those platforms are to be used, and how accessible and how simplified is the approach for people to join. Sometimes when people are interested to join something, they get turned off by the sheer complexity of registration procedures per se, as opposed to like mounting your lecture on a YouTube channel, something like that. So I don't know how appealing would Coursera be as compared to the commonly and popularly used platforms. So that the appeal would be through the collaborations with the industry and other universities through Coursera. But I think, I'm not sure, I have not gone to my, I'm a bit embarrassed to say that I have not explored Coursera, but it may be something that would deter people from joining, I think, simplicity or otherwise.
And I suppose a lot of the ways that we can encourage staff to take a look at those platforms like Coursera is institutions allowing them the time to have the correct training to use platforms like that. Definitely. How much do you think your institutions have dedicated to staff training in terms of becoming more internationally minded, more outward looking in terms of perhaps their own research as well? If anyone wants to jump in on that one, I'm aware that a few of you haven't had a chance to speak yet, so please do jump in if that's the case. If not, perhaps Camilla, I'm not sure if that's something that you've been thinking about, staff training. Oh no, please.
Thank you, but then I was staring down Dr. Zahiruddin because I know he wants to say something.
Please do.
So what was the question again?
Sorry. I was asking about staff training. If we want to become more internationally minded and more collaborative, do we need to allow staff the space and the time to have training on new platforms?
I think exactly. We do need to have that built into our system. In UM, what we did is when we train staff on certain platforms, we make sure that they actually go into that particular platform to do the training and set themselves. So we use quite a lot of Microsoft Teams right now. And what we do is the trainings that we did it in Teams. So we don't do it in, for example, Google Meet or whatever. So that's how we make sure that the lecturers themselves, the staff themselves actually experience the kind of environment where they will be able to actually explore features of the platform while they are actually having a meeting or training or whatever. So and we work with quite a number of platforms. We even have our own platform. So we don't use Coursera. We use FutureLearn. So we are actually creating courses for our lecturers on FutureLearn, so that they can actually go and experience the platform themselves. And whenever we ask them to create courses on the platform, one of the few things that we ask them to do is go onto the platform, experience the learning yourself, and then report to us what you like about it, what you don't like about it. So then they themselves have that experience from the platform, and they know what to expect and what to look for in terms of creating their own courses, their own content on the platform.
Thank you. And I suppose if we're pursuing a sort of bottom-up approach to innovation, you know, the staff who are interacting with students are the first people to experience a platform, then that can travel up throughout the university, and then, you know, for future years of students as well. I think if we're talking about future students, we have to also consider the alumni who leave an institution. So once they leave, is that the end of their learning experience there? Or is there a provision to encourage lifelong learning, whether it's through continued partnerships with industry, micro-credentials? I'm sure these are all things that you've been considering. Rafiq, I saw you were nodding a little bit there at that idea.
Yeah. So we see the next 4 or 5 years, we put lots of emphasis on accessibility and lifelong learning. We're looking at forming consortium with a number of universities, and we see that the demand for upskilling and reskilling through professional certification, executive diploma is on the rise. And surprisingly, our international students registration actually increased across the COVID period. And since we are situated in Penang, there's a lot of demand from the industries for us to introduce all these upskilling and reskilling courses, and that require a lot of adjusting by our academics, in the sense that, you know, you can't teach the usual content for undergraduates. You have to actually teach different things to different audiences, and we also put a lot of effort in increasing access to marginalized societies, you know, above a certain age group, more ethnicities, also. So I think whatever that works in terms of offering different way of accessing our courses, especially the model that Coursera mentioned just now, and putting industries there as part of you know, to have some beef in terms of our content. We're doing that now. Of course, as mentioned by Perry just now, MQA is a stumbling block to a certain extent, because you know, you have people who don't really facilitate. You know, all you get from them is no, you can't do this, because, you know, there's an act back in 1987 that says no, research universities are not allowed to offer executive diplomas and those kind of things. But as it is, with regards to the economic situation, the job landscape requires us to move very quickly. There's a lot of demand for programmers, for you know, future jobs, but we're not fluid in that sense. We can't commit to a 4-year degree nowadays, and we're looking into micro-credentialing as well. But that, again, that will require people who have the authority to say, yes, okay, a micro-credential by USM is recognized by Sunway or by UITM, and a lot of credit transfer. Then we can have this democratization of education, if you like. A lot of hurdle to overcome the next 2 or 3 years. But until we do that, we're not playing our fullest part in nation building, in addressing all these national agendas and all these concerns. I think, yeah, that's the situation that we have at this point of time.
If I may add from what Prof. Rafiq was saying, is that actually has taken steps in trying to include or give access to more people in the whether it's alumni or whether it's actually working people. So we are embarking on remote learning initiatives, and also online distance learning education initiatives that we are pursuing right now quite vigorously, looking at how it can actually give more access, and we can leverage from whatever technologies that we have at the moment. I think in terms of the higher education sphere, we would want to be careful with online education, where if you use platforms like a MOOC platform, you are likely to end up with learning alone, because the collaboration within platforms, if not designed properly, then you will not actually get it. So the collaboration part of the course design, the online course design, is actually really important, and that is something that we really advocate and think about when we design our online courses.
Thank you. Perry, I think that the hurdles that have been discussed look like something that you are quite familiar with. How important do we just need to charge forward and, you know, batter them down? Is it really essential that we do create an environment where micro-credentials and lifelong learning are just a standard part of higher education?
Oh, look, I think, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we're in a period of substantial change and disruption. We've seen so many other industries massively disrupted through this, as you've gone into digitalization, and universities were going to be quite resistant to this. And I think it would have taken us a lot longer had COVID, you know, not come along and forced this change. As you've heard from some of my colleagues here, some of the challenges are that in many countries, the challenge has been the blockers or barriers to that. And on the one hand, the government here has been saying, yes, we need to have micro-credentials, let's get away. And then, you know, but then it goes back to a whole bunch of other rules and regulations, which completely get in the way of actually helping some of these things to move ahead. Now, don't get me wrong, Malaysia is not unique in this aspect. You know, I've worked in enough other countries and jurisdictions to know that there are many other places which are suffering from these sorts of challenges. And, you know, as you go forward in this time, you know, this could be a period of great new ways of internationalizing education way beyond what we've ever seen before. The challenge will be that, like, as you see in many other disruptions, it's a winner takes all. And this is very challenging because, you know, you've got Netflix has done a great job with Amazon Prime. You've got huge, when software happens with Google, with Spotify, doesn't matter what sector you want to look into. Now, this becomes challenging because on the one hand, digitalization works when you've got a platform or platforms that can talk and interact with one another. So, you know, that demands language, it demands, you know, comparability, it demands having those platforms. And that, I think, is the challenge that we're facing at the moment about where we will go with that. So it's not just having qualifications within one country that can talk to another. This has now become global. And so that's got all sorts of implications for accreditation organizations, which I used to head up before I came in. You know, how do you make that a globally recognized one? There's no point one country having another not. So there are going to be many hurdles to get over going forward from here.
Thank you. Yes, accreditation actually is a very, you know, important aspect of this. As you said, it doesn't matter if one institution or country has got the best qualification going if it's not being recognized elsewhere. Eclavia, is that something that Coursera is in any position to help overcome as such an international platform itself?
Yeah, so I heard Professor Hobson also talking about so two things. One is the globalization, and second is the policy change. And policy changes, regulations don't happen so quickly, right? So it's not only Malaysia, across the world, and it's not just the education sector, right? So any sector, if there is a regulation change or the policy change that needs to happen, it takes time. And that's why what are some of the universities doing is not waiting in a way to offer credit using some of these external platforms, but offering as a multidisciplinary or additional learning available to the students. So because if you're offering it for credit, then obviously you'll have to go through this entire process of approvals. But obviously the industry won't wait, neither the students. So the universities are blending in some of the content from Coursera and offering to the students as additional learning option. Second is on the part of globalization. So while the nature of work is becoming global, I think the aspirations are also global. So the students today, whether I'm a student in Indonesia or India or Malaysia, I am not aspiring, or I don't look up to the university or the working option available to me to be best in India or Indonesia, but I am also looking and comparing my learning options to the students in Australia or UK or Japan or US. And that's where I think some of these aspects need to come together so that the students are not left behind. And we also go hand in hand while the policy changes happen, but not let the students be behind by offering some of the content which is relevant even for today.
Thank you. I think we are just starting to come up to time here, but if anyone did want to add anything else to today's discussion, we certainly have the time to dip into that. If anyone had any comments about the micro-credentials and the lifelong learning that we've just been speaking about. Hadari, I'm not sure, I saw you nodding there, whether you were just experiencing the same pain as everyone else, or if you had a new something else to add.
I've been speaking quite a bit. Yes, actually, the evolution needs to happen in whether or not COVID comes or not. But I think the world is very much going to evolve into blurring of borders. So I think micro-credentials, even though it is something that is, at certain aspect, it is a little bit difficult to quantify or to measure because of the nature of micro-credentials. It is something that we really need to take up seriously. And then many universities, because this concept is not something that had been around for the past 5 or 10 years. This is quite new. So many things are being at my university, at least, we are working towards employing more of these micro credentials and things like that, and digitalization and getting everybody to come on board. But the challenge is tremendous. The pain is definitely there. And for people who have been teaching for the past 10, 20, or maybe 30 years, that is not going to be something that they can embrace that readily. But yeah, we just have to, as a university, we just have to keep on trying and giving training, as you're saying. Yes, in UITM, we're giving a lot of training. That is one particular institute, our Institute of Leadership and Development, who has the responsibility of providing all these trainings. But of course, having 9,000 lecturers, or around 9,000 lecturers all over the country, it is a huge challenge, and the cost is tremendous to give the due time and attention to each one of our lecturers, give them this training. But yes, we're going to take it in bite sizes, and then go as we can. Yeah, it is painful, definitely.
Thank you so much. I think with that, we are probably at time here. We've covered a huge amount of topics, and it seems like we are gaining real momentum with some of these challenges that perhaps we weren't able to address before. For now, I think I would just like to thank everyone for joining us today, for bringing your own insights to the discussion. Today's session will be available on demand in the coming days, so please do feel free to take a look at that and any of our other post-event content. And I hope to see all of you again for some future discussions, whether that's in person or back via video. So thank you all. Goodbye.